Thanks for staying with us. I'm Akshay Tandon. Social media giant TikTok is suing to block an American law that could force a nationwide ban of the popular app. The court challenge sets up a historic legal battle. It will determine whether U.S. security concerns about TikTok's links to China can trump the First Amendment rights of the app's 170 million American users. The stakes of the case are high for TikTok. If it loses, it could be banned from the U.S. stores unless its Chinese parent company sells the app to a non-Chinese entity by January 2025. Let's now bring in tech analyst Carmi Levy. Carmi, it's good to see you. You've been following the story very closely, we know. So let's talk about this. Pretty much on expected lines because TikTok had said it will challenge this.
Yeah, we knew they were going to take this to court. And so obviously it took a little bit of time from when the law became the law, when President Biden signed off on it last month, for them to move ahead with it, put their case together and then file it in federal court. Now that's happened. So no surprise at all. I think what, you would expect ByteDance, which literally the future of its American operations lie kind of in, the stakes are incredibly high. You would expect them to do that. You would expect them to throw as much into the water as possible between now and next January. And I would expect that once the lawsuit is finalized and kind of in motion, we're likely going to see more legal action, probably an injunction as well, to buy themselves as much time as they can between now and January and hopefully push that date even further into next year.
There's so much out there on TikTok, other social media applications as well about this story. So I want to ask you to sort of, filter out the noise about how actually it's not possible for the U.S. to ban TikTok. Because when it talks about stakeholders, many of the stakeholders within TikTok are actually people who are not linked to China. Talk to us a little about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the government, the legislators in bringing forward this law have said that there's ample evidence that the Chinese government has access to American data, but they haven't provided any proof of that. And we know that there has been action going on. They've been working together, ByteDance and the U.S. government, as well as other technology stakeholders, to move the data to American service, to compartmentalize it against or from Chinese eyes. And so that's already been in motion for years now. And the fact that the U.S. government has kind of launched this action while that is in play is somewhat surprising. It suggests that maybe this wasn't necessarily about protecting the data, but it was about making a political statement to China during an election year.
Security concerns here, like you're saying, of course, there is no strong evidence, or it hasn't been presented just as yet in court about what could be the data breach, what sort of information is being shared. But generally speaking about the possibility of data leaks here or information being shared, Carmi, what's the length at which an application can actually do that?
When we install an app on any device, we grant it permissions. And of course, most of us don't pay attention to the pop-ups that show up then. We're just in a rush to install the app. We know that every app does that. We know that TikTok is particularly aggressive in what it collects, the conditions under which it collects it. And of course, then there's the question of where it goes once it's collected. This is way beyond Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat. And so I think that really is the sort of the key here, is that our smartphones represent a mirror into our digital lives. Someone who looks at that collected data can learn a lot about us. A state actor would love to know what millions of Americans are up to on their phones, because that's better than any spy. They can create a very detailed picture of their adversary just by soaking up that information from their phones.
And the other big question, of course, and that's why this case is in the court, but is this really about security concerns that could trump the First Amendment rights of how many millions of Americans out there?
If this was really about security, Akshay, the U.S. government wouldn't be focused just on one app. They'd be looking at all apps in all app stores. Of the millions of apps that are out there, identifying which ones have Chinese connections and then dealing with them directly. So this is less about security, and there is a very high bar in order to prevent infringing on First Amendment rights. And so the government's going to have to prove that in this case. If this were really about security, it wouldn't just be about TikTok. It would be about every app. And of course, that's not the case. More of a political statement than anything else this year.
All right. We'll leave it at that for the moment. Carmi, always appreciate you joining us. That's Carmi Levy, tech analyst. Thanks again.
Thanks, Akshay.